group meeting to order. So welcome everyone, and thank you all for joining today. And for any new participants, my name is Preston McLaughlin. I'm the Transportation Mobility Manager here at PAG RTA, and I'll be facilitating this and all future transit working group meetings. We are conducting this meeting on Zoom, and we have the meeting information on the screen. Please note that you are all automatically on mute, and to take yourself off of mute, go to the bottom left of your screen to do that. So I'd first like to start with a roll call of each of the jurisdictions and the representatives from each jurisdiction. So for the city of Tucson,
Susan Spies.
all right, thank you, Susan. The city of South Tucson, the Tohono O'odham Nation, the Pasquayaqui tribe, Pima County,
Good morning, Samuel Paz, Pima County DOT.
thanks, Sam. The town of Marana,
Hi, good morning. Lisa Schaefer, Town of Marana.
all right, the town of Sahuarita,
Hello, good morning, everyone. This is Nalo with the town of Sarita.
thank you. And the town of Oro Valley.
Yeah, this is Mike Alexander, Transit Administrator, Town of Oro Valley.
Okay, great, thank you. So yes, we should have a quorum, so we can proceed with the meeting. And with that, I will jump to agenda item number 2, which is the in-kind form. And I don't know if we need to be sharing information on the screen or not. I'm not able to see it.
Jesse, can you flip to the second one?
Yeah, right now I'm not seeing a screen at all.
Give us 1 second, Preston. I apologize.
Okay. All right, I'm going to give the admin team a minute to get the screen adjusted. So I'm seeing the table for agenda item number 4 right now.
Sorry, our normal Zoom runner person is out today, so we got to back up. Give us just a moment. I apologize.
Gotcha. Jamie, you had a question or comment?
If it helps, I did find a statement related to in kind that we usually read at meetings. That if it helps, I could read that.
Yeah, I have some text on my end that I was going to read, but I know that I guess traditionally there was something pulled up on the screen as well for visual purposes. But if we don't need to do that, then I can just go ahead and give my little spiel. I don't know, I guess what the requirements are. And maybe Bree.
Personally, I don't know that there's a need to have it displayed as long as it's spoken. I think
Okay.
it suffices from my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we normally display the slide just to kind of help you guys out so that you don't have to have other text up. But if Jamie has the text and he can read it, or if you have the text, Preston, you guys can go ahead and read it. It's just really letting them know that this is what's happening.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can go ahead and do that then. I just thought maybe the visual component was needed, but if not, I'll just go ahead and provide a verbal version. So for agenda item number 2, which is our in-kind form, regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAC collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. Okay. And time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAC staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAC RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. So with that, I think we can move on to agenda item number 3. So this item, we are going to be discussing TIP amendments for fiscal year 26, FTA and STBG flex apportionment changes. And for this item, we will be reviewing the revised TIP transit project funding adjustments for fiscal year 26 and make any changes needed to balance the programmed funding. All revised project applications, as well as the programming request table, were included in the Transit Working Group packet that was emailed out to all members yesterday morning. So hopefully you had a chance to quickly review that. And funding levels and any needed prioritization will be discussed in this meeting. And staff will make any necessary adjustments to the funding levels prior to final, before recommending approval to the Transportation Planning Committee. So for this iteration of project adjustments, it's the City of Tucson and Oro Valley were the 2 jurisdictions that have requested additional funding for their projects for fiscal year 26. Right now, there's currently an excess of $22,000 that will need to be adjusted to stay within fiscal constraint. And then once that program funding has been aligned with our budget, we'll move to amend or remove the amended list of TIP projects forward to the Transportation Planning Committee, or the TPC. So that's the current plan. So I would now like to hand it off to our management analyst, Thomas Robertson, to provide any additional details on this matter. And Thomas, you can go ahead if you're able to share your screen and pull up that table so we can make real-time adjustments to the project list.
Of course, and I appreciate it, Preston. I will say, as it currently stands, I am unable to share my screen.
Okay. Bree or Jesse, let me know if Thomas is able to share his screen.
Otherwise, I can comment on it, saying that we took the projects from all jurisdictions and put them into a nice spreadsheet. If you were here last year, it's a very similar process as that. Thankfully, we're making a much smaller adjustment than we were prior, so hopefully it won't be long.
Yeah, and based off the information we received, there should only be 3 projects that are sponsored by the City of Tucson that are going to be adjusted, and then one, the Oro Valley project for bus replacements. And in the table, at least in the table that I provided in the packet yesterday, I highlighted in yellow the projects that there are requested adjustments for. And again, it's pretty minimal. The other item I wanted to note to make sure that everyone is aware of is for the funding apportionments for each of the FTA grants, and I rounded down. So that is going to impact the numbers a little bit of what was provided, but
There we go. And now we have screen sharing.
okay, great. So yeah, this is the current proposed project list. These are the projects where we need to somewhere in this list we need to deduct $22,000. 21,000 of the dollars that need to be deducted need to come from 5307 grant funding, and only 1,000 needs to come from 5339 funding. And the city is the only jurisdiction that is eligible for 5339. So regardless, I think that that one line item for bus replacements 5339 should just be dropped by $1,000. And then the other 21,000 that needs to be discussed between you know, the eligible jurisdictions. Isaac, I see that you had a hand up if you had a comment.
Thank you. Yes, and Susan, I think, is here as well. But I wanted to make two comments. Firstly, for the 5339, we, the city of Tucson, rounded up, so that you rounded down makes sense. We could take that down to the 1,877,000. When we submit the applications and trims, we use the actual amounts, the full portion amounts. So that will, I think the intent is there, and we can round down. That's not a problem at all. And then for the other item, before we start talking figures, I just wanted to confirm that Oro Valley needs a total of $529,000 for the purchase of their vehicles. And if that's true, then making sure that we have the 85-15 split, which would mean less of a local commitment and higher utilization of federal funds for that particular item, using the 85-15 split. By my count, I'm rounding up, it'd be $450,000 federal commitment, and then what would that be?
That's assuming they want to do the 85-15 split instead of the 80-20 split.
That's correct, but since they are revenue vehicles, it is in all of our best interest to do that. And moreover, when we, the city of Tucson, submit those projects into TRAMS, FTA asks why we're not taking full advantage of the opportunity to use that 85-15% split. And so
I agree with you.
Okay. So it looks like Mike, did you want to respond to Isaac's question? And you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry about that. Isaac, I could barely hear what you're saying, and Thomas and Preston are blowing my ears off. So I think you said something about 529,000, but this report says 423.
that's correct, but I want to make sure that the total is 529,000.
Oh, okay.
And if that's true, then taking the 85-15 split on that 529.
Okay, so give me a second here. Yeah, with 3 buses, it's about 176 apiece. So that's probably very correct.
Okay, so
The question, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Tom.
So the question he's asking is that since the fact it's a revenue vehicle, y'all are eligible to, instead of paying an 80-20 split, it could instead be a 85-15 split, which would mean a 5% lower local match than what y'all are currently paying. From my understanding, it has been offered to your agency before, and it has been declined in past years. And that's my understanding.
Did they offer a reason why that would be declined?
It's years past my time. I am not aware as to why. it would still be an option. It's not as if the option passed. And I wonder if Adam, do you have anything to add to this by chance?
I do indeed. It's nothing too complicated or nefarious, folks. I just reached out when we were programming this exercise a couple of years ago and said, hey, it looks like eligibility for these programs are 8515 per ADA and Clean Air Act requirements. And does anybody want to do 15 instead of 20? City of Tucson said, yeah, we'll do it. Oro Valley said, no, we're okay. So that's it. We can make that change anytime. It's really just about the programming. If we programmed additional local funds and you still went after 8515, it wouldn't matter at the end of the day. Effectively, in the tip, local funds or local match are just a placeholder for your discretionary. It's as long as we show that it's funded, we're fine. So it's really a non-issue is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah, if 8515 works, we'll take the 8515.
Good idea.
So I think that would mean 450. Yep.
Gotta love Excel.
I think that would be
23
400.
divided by 0.85 minus 23 instead of the 0.8.
Guys, actually, sorry, that calculation, if you see the 0.85 in there, it's already calculated at 15% match.
So that
I just changed it.
Oh, you
from
just
0.8
changed it.
to
All right,
0.85. I quite literally just changed it.
He's so fast.
So, yeah, it's so fast, so furious. Can't help it.
If I think what that would mean then, so that Oro Valley gets the full amount that they need, would be that the federal portion goes up to 450.
Goes up to 450 instead of that. Let's see.
And then the
Oh yeah, that didn't change that value. Stop me at any point because I'm not verifying this. I'm just taking what you are telling me.
And then the sum of those two is the 530. I know we're talking about 529, but with the rounding, I think that serves our purposes.
Great. Yeah, if you have any changes, tell me make the change. I'm not having time to verify it on the fly, so if y'all tell me something incorrect, it's gonna be an incorrect change.
Yeah.
All right then.
And so now we're over subscribed for 5307. I think we made the change on 5339, right? Or you at least documented that we will.
Yep, already documented right here to change down by 1,000 to get that to the 1.87 instead of the 1.877.
So now
1.876 or 1.877.
Yeah, it looks like with the adjustment to the Oro Valley line item, the excess of 5307 funding is 48,000 now. That needs to be decreased somewhere.
And we did have we talked to the director's office about what City of Tucson would be okay with. We're okay with reducing that from the bus replacements 5307. So bringing that down to 1,782,000.
Yep. Okay then. And you're willing to do the full 48,000?
Yes. In the sake of regional cooperation.
Wonderful.
Great. So yeah, that should do it then.
Okay, perfect.
So that amount would be 1.782 million with that 48,000 adjustment, just to put on the record.
Yes.
Okay. So I believe with those two adjustments that were within fiscal constraint for fiscal year 26. Unless there's any objections or any additional comments or anything I'm missing. But it seems pretty clear cut. So with that, I, Preston McLaughlin, would like to request a motion from one of the members to recommend this adjusted project list to the Transportation Planning Committee for approval. So I'll open it up for anyone to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. This is Susan Spies. I'll make a motion for the City of Tucson to go ahead and implement the approval.
This is Nalo with the Town of Sarita. I second that motion.
All right, excellent. So we have a first and a second. If no additional discussion is requested on this motion, I will now move to a vote. Are there any additional comments before moving to a vote? All right, sounds like there isn't. So all in favor, say aye.
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 And all opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion has passed unanimously.
Wonderful, and I will turn my camera off then. Thank you kindly for your time, y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. All right, great. I think we can now move on to agenda item number 4, which is discussion on RTA-funded transit services. So this is just an informational agenda item to describe all forms of transit currently being funded and or operated by the RTA. I included a table in the meeting packet that breaks out all RTA transit costs by jurisdiction for fiscal year 25. With that said, I did want to note that there were some estimations that were made in these calculations, which means that these are general approximations of numbers that I calculated to the best of my ability. The main goal of this exercise was to provide the jurisdictions with a high-level understanding of how RTA transit funds are distributed across the region. And this table was shared with the RTA's Technical Management Committee, or TMC, as well as the RTA board. But I felt that it would be beneficial to provide this table to the Transit Working Group as well, since we've been talking through the finances of the RTA transit funding. It seemed like a good opportunity to provide a space to, again, provide maybe additional details on what the numbers represent, and if there's any questions or any clarity that's needed, we can discuss that here. It looks like they're working on pulling up that table, so I'll give the admin team a minute to pull up that table, and then I can describe the funding and the details of the table once that's visible. There we go. Okay. Oh, I did see it. Okay, cool. There we go. Thank you. So you may have already seen this table before. I will say there have been some slight calculation adjustments since you've seen it last, maybe if you've seen it already. Mainly with the Oro Valley line item. Originally, I overweighted the calculation, so that has been adjusted. So these should be the most accurate value amounts per jurisdiction. So just to give a little bit of context, there was discussion on the RTA Next and the funding that RTA provides, transit funding specifically that the RTA provides to the region. And there was a request from the elected officials to pull together and break out all RTA related transit costs that the RTA spends on an annual basis, and then break that out by jurisdiction. And so that's what these numbers are representing. So the second column, that number specifically looks at all fixed route service, so bus and shuttle services, all general public dial-a-ride services that Sun Shuttle provides. So that includes the general public dial-a-ride services in Oro Valley, in Marana-Avra Valley, in Ajo, and also in Sajorita and Green Valley. And then the PCOA, that's Pima Council on Aging. So every year, the RTA provides $250,000 to the PCOA for that organization to provide volunteer-based transportation services for the elderly in the county. So that was also taken into consideration as well. So all those numbers were pulled together in total for fiscal year 25. It was calculated that $23 million of RTA funding was spent on fixed route, general public dial ride, and PCOA transportation services. And the ways in which this was broken out by jurisdiction was we were looking at all services that the RTA provided within each of the jurisdictions, and that so when looking at fixed route services, for example, we broke out the length of the route by percentage of the route that falls within each jurisdiction. So, for example, Route 401, 80% of that route is within Oro Valley, so 80% of the total cost for that route was placed into the Oro Valley cell or box, and then 20% of Route 401 was Pima County. So the remaining 20% of that route and the funding, 20% of the funding annually for that route was put into Pima County. So that was done for all the fixed route services. With paratransit, which is the third column, that again includes all of our ADA dial-a-ride and the paratransit Sun Van services that the city provides that receive funding from the RTA. That's what that column represents. And those values looked at it pulled together all of the paratransit trips that Sun Shuttle provided for the year and geocoded the origin locations for each of those trips. And we broke out the costs by how many trips originated in each of the jurisdictions. So that was, the most efficient way of breaking out paratransit costs for the year by jurisdiction. The other big piece where, $19 million of the entirety, the almost $32 million for the year, were funds between the RTA and the city of Tucson as an IGA. And those funds were provided to the city of Tucson for the city to enhance their SunTran services. So that funding supported the SunTran related transit services that went into other jurisdictions other than the city of Tucson. So the segments of certain fixed routes that went into Pima County or went into Oro Valley or South Tucson, that's what those IGAs funded for the year, as well as some of the Sun Van services within the other jurisdictions as well. So that is a big chunk of the funding that was distributed both into the fixed route column and the paratransit column, depending on where the funding was distributed. And again, those IGA, that $19 million in IGA funding for the year was broken out by where the funding went in the region. And, if there was a segment of a route that went into Pima County and it was X number of dollars, that amount from the IGA was plugged into the Pima County cell. So I know it's a lot of information and it's a little complicated, but that's the general ways in which the $32 million that the RTA funded in transit for fiscal year 25 was broken out by jurisdiction. And then if you look at the fifth column, you see MOE Fair Credit. Those are actually funds that the jurisdictions provide the RTA to help fund transit services in their jurisdiction. And so for the city of Tucson, they offer the RTA a fair credit. For the year, the city of Tucson provided the RTA $2.7 million in fair credits. And the reason that they are providing that fair credit is because we are not we are currently not collecting fares, along with Sun Trans. Sun Shuttle is not collecting fares, and because of that, the city is supplementing us that amount that we would theoretically be collecting in fares if we were collecting fares, which is that $2.7 million. And then for Pima County and Marana, those are maintenance of efforts, or MOEs, that they provide us on an annual basis, again, to help cover the cost of service in their jurisdiction. And that is a state requirement. It's a legal requirement of both Pima County and Marana to provide us that funding on an annual basis. So that was deducted from the total amount, or from column number 4. And then what you get is the total amount with the MOE and fare credits deducted. And so that's that second to last column there, which is about $21 million. And then the last column, that percentage of total, that is based on the total cost of service by jurisdiction. That the percent of total shows the total percent of funding going into each jurisdiction, based on what was spent for the fiscal year. So, as you can see, the city of Tucson receives 42% of funding, Pima County 27%, Oro Valley 12%, Marana 6%, and so on. And so that shows essentially the current level of funding that was provided in fiscal year 2025 going to transit services in each of these jurisdictions. So again, a lot of information, but if you do have any questions related to this, I'm happy to try and answer them. But I just wanted to provide this information just to give all the transit professionals in the region and a high level understanding and a general picture of what funding goes where, how RTA funding is distributed across the region, and what's at stake in a way with RTA and the future of RTA, because depending on what happens with the RTA moving forward, once it expires in fiscal year 26, there's basically this amount that is needed to continue the current level of service that's being provided today, and we will need to figure out how to fill that gap in funding. So hopefully that paints a better picture at the jurisdictional level of where the RTA funding goes and what the costs are associated with services in everyone's jurisdiction. So with that, yeah, I'll open it up to any questions or comments, and we can talk through it a little bit if there's any clarity that's needed or anything like that. Yeah, Mary, you had a comment?
Thank you, Preston. Since we have the transit working group here, I just wanted to make mention, many of you are very aware that the TMC has been meeting regularly. We're trying to get to a decision for the board. And I want to make sure that everybody in this group understands that we're fighting very hard for transit funding based on how close we are to 2026. And that if they have special interest groups or they have individuals who are speaking to them about transit, that we've heard some misinformation out there in the sense that, somebody may make a statement that they're not going to vote for RTA next or whatever the plan is going to be named, if it doesn't include 30% of transit funding. And what we need to dispel is that without a new plan and without a approval of our board and our voters, all the transit services would go back to 2006 levels. So that would be, I think, Preston, to quote you, that would be catastrophic. So just everybody in this group needs to understand that there's a lot of meetings and a lot of discussion to protect transit at current service levels. So just put it out there. That's it.
Thanks, Mary. Mike, I see you had your hand up.
Unmute. So talking about RTA Next, I asked people around here, if you've ever heard of RTA Next, this is what it could not do. Nobody knows anything about it. Never heard of RTA Next. So how do we get that out to people? I know I've seen commercials, I see it on our computers here, but how does it get out to the population so people understand what it is and what it does?
That is true. Yeah, I mean, based on the research that we've conducted or that we've hired consultants to conduct for us, I think I forgot what the exact number was, but when surveys were taken in the region and asked, do you know what the RTA is? I think 85% of people said no. They had no idea what the RTA was. So that gives you an idea of the big gap in knowledge regionally about the RTA, and what services the RTA provides in terms of transit, in terms of roadway projects. And that is a really important component that needs to be acknowledged, and there needs to be a plan set in place. I think we're talking through that right now. I mean, I know on our end at least, we have a public outreach team. There's going to be a marketing campaign once a decision has been made on how the region wants to move forward with the next iteration of the RTA, whether it's called the RTA Next or something else. Then there's going to be a big push, at least internally, to begin that outreach, to begin social media and flyers and mailers and, you know, I pu public outreach sessions and that type of thing. So that's what we're doing on our end, and I feel what would be good in alignment with the efforts that we're taking within our organization is, everyone at all the other jurisdictions doing something similar. If they're invested in this plan, having some sort of outreach, some sort of communication at the jurisdictional level to all the constituents, to all the stakeholders. So there's that information gets communicated not just through our organization, but from all different angles, from all different from every jurisdiction. So people are aware of what's at stake, what funding, what this funding pays for, how transit specifically, since we're talking about transit, is going to be impacted. So that's the input I would give. Mary, I know maybe you have some additional information to add.
Yeah, I would just add that conversations and Mike Ortega, who is now at the helm, has really emphasized with all the different jurisdictions is once the messaging is decided, that everybody is reading from the same sheet of music, which is critically important because each jurisdiction will have its own constituents and how to deliver that message. As Preston made a comment that, we don't know who RTA is, but if you say, do you know about the Twin Peaks interchange? Do you know about Valencia's improvements? They'll go, oh yeah, I live out there. Oh yes, I understand what that is. So they know what the projects are. They know potentially an element of the RTA, and it's drawing those things back to what is important or near them. So yeah, that will be the charge of the communications team to coordinate with all the jurisdictions.
So yeah, it's going to be a joint effort, to answer your question, and we don't know what that effort is going to look like just yet. But we're all very aware that the RTA is that acronym is not well known regionally, and we need to make a more of an effort to make it known and to make it clear what the RTA funds and how it impacts all the individuals in the region. Whether it's their road that's going to be improved or it's going to be transit services that they use as maintained. So Mike, I did see that you had your hand up, you dropped it. Did you have any other follow-up comments or questions on that?
Well, you guys answered a lot of the questions that I was coming up with, but I think sometimes with how it's presented, it's huge. Oh my gosh, this is so big, and maybe a lot of people start tuning it out because they don't understand any of it. So trying to, and like a lack of a better word, kind of dummy it down a little bit so people understand what this is. I mean, the last I heard was $610 million just for transit, but that's over 20 years for the region. I don't know if that's even enough for the region, especially given the current prices of everything. So majority of that is for roads, and like you say, you're gonna advertise or whatever. Is that advertisement, is that effort gonna do anything before June of next year? I mean, by the time you actually get it up there, yeah, that it sounds like it's gonna expire, and then maybe a couple of years later, hopefully come back. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what's being worked out right now at the TMC meetings and in at the RTA board meetings. There hasn't been a decided plan on how to move forward. With that said, I think we're going to have that information very soon because we need to have it very soon. Because if we are wanting to put something on the ballot for March, which I think was the original plan, we need to have, what we want to put on the ballot finalized. I don't know what the date was, but within the next few weeks. So I think everyone's aware of the time sensitivity of this, and again, the goal of this project was to show people or show the elected officials and the jurisdictional representatives this is how much is at stake for each of your jurisdictions, and if without the RTA, these are the amounts that the jurisdictions will have to foot if they want to maintain the current level of service in their community. And so that this is just one piece of the puzzle, obviously, like you said. I mean, maybe 25%, 30% of the RTA funding, proposed RTA funding will be going to transit. The rest will be going to roadway projects and other safety enhancements and environmental stuff. But it is an important component. It's a significant piece, and it's been really great because I think we've had some really good dialogue, and I think a lot of people have become more aware of the finances that maybe they weren't aware of in the past. So this has spurred on some really good conversations, and I think we're going to continue to have those important conversations moving forward. And Mike, to answer your question, I hope we should have an answer on how we move forward in the next few weeks. I think by the next RTA board meeting, I think we need some sort of guidance on how to move forward. Right now, we're just providing the data or providing the information for them to make an informed decision on how they want to proceed. And with the marketing, yeah, I mean, we're going to need to we're going to have to build a story. We're going to have to make it personal. We can't just talk numbers. We can't just talk, these $600 million over here, 700 million over there. It needs to be effective at the individual scale, and for the individual to think, oh, this is how these projects impact me. And I'm not part of that public outreach team. They're the professionals, and I'm sure they're going to come up with a really great outreach strategy that does that. And because that's what we've talked about, and I know that that's the plan, is to make it more human, to make it more personal, to make it, as simple as possible, to be as digestible as possible to the average person that maybe doesn't know what the RTA even is. So yeah, that is the plan, that is the hope. And yeah, I hope that we can, once we start that outreach, it does provide the public with enough time to take in that information and then come to the ballot and vote one way or the other on it. So yeah, it is a work in progress. It's very layered. It's a lot more complicated than anyone would ever think. But yeah, I think we're making some really good progress there. At least in the last few months, I think we've made some really great progress. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I think I'll leave it there. Were there any other comments related to the funding amounts, to the breakouts? before we move on to agenda item number 5? Okay. Well, with that, let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is Suntrans major service changes for August. So for this item, Suntrans staff will provide a presentation on the bus service changes taking effect on August 17th, which is actually coming up very soon. It's this Sunday. And there should be a presentation available. We will operate Shamara. I think you're online or on the call. So whenever you need to move forward with a slide, I believe we'll have to do it on our end. Is that correct?
That's fine.
Okay. So let's pull up that presentation, and then whenever that's pulled up, Shamara, you can begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Give us just a minute, Preston. I apologize.
Okay.
All right, perfect. So to quickly introduce myself, if you don't know, my name is Shamara Smith, and I am the transit planner here at Suntran. And today I'm going to be talking about all the August changes that we are proposing, or that we are going to have August 17th, 2025, which is this coming Sunday. If you don't know, these changes are part of our comprehensive operational analysis, which is what we did during, I believe, 2023. We went out to the public and we went with changes that would improve the efficiency of our current system. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk about our first change, which is to the Route 2. As you can see, Route 2, one of the changes that we're doing is changing the name. So previously it was Pueblo Gardens, but now we're changing it to Tucson Marketplace to better reflect what the routing goes through. And a part of these changes to Route 2 is we are stopping at Banner UMSD instead of continuing to Laos. Now, people won't be losing their service from Country Club to Laos Transit Center, as the 29 will pick up that service, which we'll see when we go to the Route 29 slide. If you go to the next slide, we have changes to Route 11. This is more of a smaller change. We are no longer traveling along Alvernon and Corona. That instead will be traveled with Route 26. So this will just go straight to the airport along Valencia Road. Next slide. This is one of our major changes. So for Route 12, we are combining the Route 12 and the Route 24 together to improve the efficiency of the system. If you go to the next slide, you'll also see the same thing with Route 16. Route 16 and Route 18 will be combining. In addition to this, Route 16 will stop at Tohono Transit Center. The routing from Tohono Transit Center to Ina and Thornydale will be covered by a new route that we're having, and it's Route 62. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that Route 62, which will have a 30-minute frequency on the weekdays and an hour frequency on the weekends. If you go to the next slide, you'll see Route 25. This is also having a minor routing change. Instead of continuing on Campbell and going to Valencia, we're going to stay on Bilby Road to Tucson Boulevard. Next slide. We have the Route 26. As I mentioned before, Route 11 used to go on Alverdon to Corona Road, that little loop. Instead, Route 26 will be doing that. In addition to this, we will no longer be traveling on Drexel and Belvedere. If we go to the next slide, this is Route 27. So Route 27 and Route 29 are kind of swapping services. So the 27 previously went down Gaia Santa Cruz, down to Drexel, and then to the Lost Transit Center. Instead, Route 27 will continue on Valencia Road and go to 6th Avenue to Lost Transit Center. And as you see on the next slide, Route 29 will continue on Gaia Santa Cruz to Irvington to Lost Transit Center. And as I mentioned earlier with the Route 2, it'll continue along Irvington to Banner UMC. In addition, we're just simplifying the routing service in the Pasco Yaqui area. And then, is that the last slide, I believe? Oh, no. So as I mentioned before, we are having some proposed route name changes. Some of the more significant ones are to Route 2. Like I mentioned, it's no longer going to be Pueblo Gardens, but it's going to be Tucson Marketplace. The same with 29. It's no longer going to be Valencia, but instead Pasco Yaqui, Banner UMC South. And then Route 62 will be Ina Road. In addition to this, we are also rearranging the transit centers. I won't get too much into this, but on the next slide, you'll see the Tohono Transit Center. With this, we are adding bay letters to help better communicate with the passengers and help with the navigation and the operation of this transit centers. So these are the small changes that we're having. So Tohono Center, instead of having Bay K as Route 16, it'll be the 62, and then F will be 16 as well. And if you go down the next slide, same thing with Rontet Transit Center. So we're just doing some minor rearranging to help with the efficiency of the system. And then Lost Transit Center, same thing here. And we're trying to keep those middle bays empty so we can use that for driver relief cars, have our supervisors and maintenance have parking in that area. But those are all the major changes that we're having. If you have any concerns about your trips, we do have the ride guide available on our website, or you can call customer service.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Shamara. I appreciate that. That was informative. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Shamara on any of the upcoming service changes, route changes that are taking place this Sunday? All right. No questions. And just to piggyback on Shamara's presentation, Sun Shuttle, our fixed route services specifically, there's not going to be any route changes. It's going to be the same, route geometry, but the schedules are going to be adjusted just a little bit, a minute here, a minute there. Nothing crazy, but there are going to be some minor schedule changes to Sun Shuttle routes starting on the 17th as well. So I'll just wanted to make that known if there's any questions about that. Mike, I see you had a question or comment.
Yeah, on all these route number changes and basically kind of where they're going, is that advertised at bus stops along the way?
They have been, yes. We put up 2 sets of posters, and we're also going to update the actual signage on the shelters and the signs.
Okay. Any other questions for Shamara? All right. Thanks again. And with that, I think we can move on to item number 6, which is just adjournment. So before adjourning, are there any additional announcements that any of the jurisdictions want to make, or any additional comments, questions worth noting or bringing up with the working group? Okay, hearing none. If there aren't any other announcements or comments or questions, I'll go ahead and officially adjourn the meeting. So thank you all for participating and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Preston.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.